to start this session out, I'd like to, in our discussion this afternoon, it is my great pleasure to introduce Joellen Darcy. Ms. Darcy is the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, where she establishes policy direction and provides supervision for the Corps of Engineers Civil Works program. Before her current position, she held a number of posts as a staff person for the U.S. Senate, and before that, she worked as a good Michigander for Michigan Governor James Blanchard. Her full bio, as many of the other speakers have been, are in your packet, so I'm not going to go through that whole thing. Joellen and I do share a former graduate program and a former major professor, so it's always good to see Joellen again. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Joellen to the podium for her remarks on the background and status of invasive species in the Chicago area waterway system. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John, and thanks everybody for inviting me to be here today. It's always not only great to be in Chicago, but to be back in the Great Lakes. Even though I've lived in D.C. now for almost 30 years and I'm a native of Massachusetts, I spent a lot of time in Michigan, so it feels like a second home to me. So we claim you. And my days as a Michigan State Spartan, team's doing pretty well this year, don't you think? Anyway, thanks everybody. I'm here today as the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, which means I represent the Army Corps of Engineers, and I have the privilege today to speak to you about the strategic role that the Corps of Engineers plays in helping to protect our nation's Great Lakes. The Corps has been involved in restoring and conserving the Great Lakes for decades, and we continue to work hard to keep up with the changing circumstances. President Obama has created a multi-year, multi-agency initiative to restore the Great Lakes. The Army Corps is one of the 16 federal agencies participating in the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. The Corps has completed 23 projects, 11 more are under construction, and we plan to begin to construct another 7 in 2016. All of these projects will help to protect and restore Great Lakes environmental resources with a combination of funding from GLRI, from the Army Corps' own appropriations funding, and non-federal funding from our cost-sharing sponsors. These projects have removed 1 million cubic yards of contaminated sediments from areas of concern and restored more than 1,000 acres of wetlands and other critical habitat. We've worked in partnership with the Great Lakes Commission to reduce the loading of phosphorus and other nutrients from Great Lake tributaries. Another significant accomplishment from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative has been the accelerated cleanup as well as the delisting of areas of concern. The removal of in-place contaminated sediments and the elimination of the sources of contamination are lifting restrictions on dredging activities at federal navigation projects and at the areas of concern. We're very excited about the progress that's being made in Duluth, where the state of Minnesota and local governments have identified several locations where sediments dredged from the Duluth Superior Harbor can be used to restore habitat without significant cost increases. We look forward to building similar relationships for harbors at other areas of concern that may be listed through the GLRI. We do, however, need to take a long-term solution and look forward to the future in doing that with supporters here at the Commission and others for long-term dredged material disposal. When beneficial use is not possible, we still need a place to put the material. The federal standard for disposal requires the least costly alternative for material that is clean enough for for unrestricted disposal. In many cases, this is open water placement. This was the case in Cleveland Harbor. However, the courts, as well as the state of Ohio, didn't see it that way. What that means is that we all collectively need to look for a long-term solution as to how we are going to be able to dispose of materials for the future. Some of our disposal facilities are meeting their cap, meeting their maximum load, so we need to think creatively on how we together can find a way for this disposal in addition to beneficial use. We're also working in close partnership with the Great Lakes Fishery Commission on a series of projects to control the invasive sea lamprey. You just heard from John about that success. Also, we're doing that through traps and barriers, and we remove or modify dams and to restore fishery passage in several Great Lakes tributaries. To date, there are 10 glypher projects that have been completed and 3 are under construction, including projects within a few miles of here on the shores of Lake Michigan. In particular, I would like to encourage you to visit the Northerly Island project, which is located just south of the Shedd Aquarium, which was recently opened by Mayor Emanuel. I think that's where one of your receptions is tonight, so hopefully you'll get there before the sun goes down and you'll be able to see the project. It's really quite impressive. The Great Lakes Fishery Commission has also helped us with our review as well as our prioritizing of our glypher projects, and it is a key to the success of these projects. Today, I'm proud to report that the Corps' efforts to control the spread of aquatic invasive species within the Chicago area waterway system. The Corps, as you know, employs a 4-pronged approach or a strategy in order to prevent the transfer of aquatic invasive species between the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River basins. We operate electric barriers in the waterway just outside Chicago. We study the barrier's effectiveness and make adjustments when necessary. We participate in the extensive monitoring of the waterways and continue to do research in monitoring for improvement of monitoring tools. And we conducted the Great Lakes and Mississippi River Interbasin Study, GLMRIS, as many of you know, which looked at options and technologies to prevent the transfer of aquatic nuisance species of concern between the river basins. Control of the spread of aquatic invasive or nuisance species is a shared responsibility. For that reason, we are part of the Asian Carp Regional Coordinating Committee, along with the Great Lakes Commission and the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission. I applaud these commissions for their efforts to achieve consensus on the way ahead. This is not an easy task, and the commission should be recognized for leading the charge through the establishment of the Cause Advisory Committee as a forum for governmental, environmental, and commercial interests to discuss the best ways to proceed. I see there is a discussion this afternoon with representatives from a few of the Cause Advisory Committee member organizations, and I think that's a great testament to the work that the Cause Advisory Committee has done and the usefulness that they have provided in all of our collaboration and coordination on addressing this problem. The status of the electric barriers has remained relatively unchanged. Barrier 1, which was authorized in Order 2007, it will be an upgrade to the demonstration barrier, but it will not replace it. The demonstration barrier operates at levels considered effective against fish greater than 12 inches in length. Barrier 1 will have increased power capacity to allow operation at higher voltages, which are necessary in order to deter smaller fish. The demo barrier will remain in place and will remain operational. We continue to operate the 3 existing barriers while construction of a Barrier 1 is ongoing. The construction of this new barrier is scheduled to be completed in 2017. Completion of this project has been a high priority for both the administration and Congress, and I'm pleased that the Corps will be able to deliver a solution that will help prevent the migration of Asian carp and other invasive species between the Great Lakes and Mississippi River through the Chicago area waterway system. After FY 2016, funding for this project will be for operation and maintenance and will be presented in future budgets in our operation and maintenance account. With regard to the Great Lakes and Mississippi River Interbasin Study, the GLMRIS, I've directed the Corps to focus on reducing the risk of interbasin transfer of aquatic nuisance species through the cause in the vicinity of Brandon Road Lock and Dam. The Brandon Road effort will assess the viability of establishing a single point to control the one-way upstream transfer of aquatic nuisance species from the Mississippi River Basin into the Great Lakes Basin near the Brandon Road Lock and Dam, which is located in Joliet, Illinois. This location is believed to be one of the most rapidly achievable structural options. Construction of one-way aquatic nuisance species control at Brandon Road is expected to enhance protections for the Great Lakes Basin while providing additional information and experience to inform a two-way risk reduction solution. We're developing a feasibility level decision document to fulfill the NEPA compliance requirements, and it would also provide data as well as analysis which is relative to the availability and the viability of ANS controls, which impact the waterways, both the users and all of the uses. The budget includes funding to continue this effort. This analysis will evaluate the range of options, or technologies that are available to prevent additional Mississippi River aquatic nuisance species transfer through the cause into the Great Lakes Basin. In Glimmers, the Corps has interpreted the term prevent to mean reduction of risk to the maximum extent practicable as well as possible, because it may not be technologically feasible to achieve an absolute solution. The physical configuration of the Brandon Road Dam prevents the upstream transfer of Mississippi River aquatic nuisance species. There is a minimum 25-foot difference in the water elevation from the downstream side of the dam to the upstream side, which effectively limits upstream transfer. Operations of the lock at this location currently provides the only known aquatic pathway that allows transfer of Mississippi River aquatic nuisance species to the Great Lakes through the cause. Prevention is the most cost-effective approach to protecting the lakes from these invasive species. Effective solutions require, at a minimum, coordination among our jurisdictions. Both the commissions and the Cause Advisory Committee are major stakeholders whose individual and joint efforts can make a major difference. I'm in year 6 of this job, which I'm very proud of, or getting a little tired. But what I'm proud of most is that we continue to consistently deliver hopefully innovative as well as resilient and risk-informed solutions to the nation's most complex water resources challenges. I'm proud that through the identification, the construction, the operation, and the maintenance of the water resources infrastructure, we will be able to reduce flood risks to communities, we'll be able to continue commercial navigation for this country, and we will restore degraded aquatic ecosystems. We're doing all of this in a more complex, resource-constrained environment, requiring greater collaboration and trust with our customers, our partners, our stakeholders, and the public. Today's Army faces many challenges in this very unpredictable world. Unprecedented floods, destructive tornadoes, raging wildfires, extensive drought, and harmful hurricanes continue to affect our nation's operations as well as our safety. Climate change is happening. Now we have to adapt. The Army Corps of Engineers has been factoring climate change and its impacts into all of our missions and operations for decades. The Corps is recognized as a leader within the federal government's climate change research community. As far back as the 1950s, the Corps researched and wrote on ice core drilling results that established the foundations of polar ice core science. This research provided information on a wide variety of aspects of climate at each point in time over hundreds of thousands of years. Recently, using the best available science and data, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and several federal agencies, through their partnership with the U.S. Global Research Program, have jointly developed a sea level rise planning tool. The tool does not tell communities or individuals how to rebuild. It helps inform decisions on how to balance the cost of rebuilding stronger and safer with the amount of risk a community can tolerate over the long term. Specifically in the Great Lakes, we are adapting to climate change as well. At the Dredge Material Disposal Facility in Green Bay, Wisconsin, we're restoring the Cat Island coastal islands and protecting more than 1,200 acres of coastal wetlands, which have been destroyed by erosion during periods of high lake levels. We are training stakeholders in the region on how to use web-based tools and computer models to evaluate the impacts of wetlands restoration projects on non-point pollution that's causing harmful algae blooms in Lake Erie and other sites. The Obama administration continues to identify and address the risks and the existing future risks and vulnerabilities of climate change, as well as to ensure that communities and ecosystems are protected and can flourish. The 2016 Corps of Engineers budget seeks to strengthen our local partners by investing $31 million to provide communities with technical and planning assistance needed to develop and implement non-structural approaches to manage and reduce flood risks. Building on significant collaboration with our other federal agencies and state and local governments, our FY 2016 budget also invests in tools that promote sustainable and resilient coastal management in light of climate change. Sustainability must be factored in whenever we are planning for the future, because that future is going to hold uncertainty as well as many more storms, the likes of Super Sandy. As the Senior Sustainability Officer for the Corps, I report energy and water sustainability results to the Office of Management and Budget and the White House Council on Environmental Quality. The Corps of Engineers has a couple of goals in this arena. The first is to increase our renewable energy consumption by 25% of agency totals by 2025, to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 20% by 2025, and to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from our non-tactical vehicles by 30% by 2025. These targets address greenhouse gas emissions from daily operations at Corps facilities, from our vehicles as well as our vessels. For 4 years now, the Corps of Engineers has executed an internal sustainability awards program to recognize as well as reward the excellence for helping the Corps to reach these goals. Winners are selected in 6 categories, all of which go on to compete with the annual Green Government Presidential Awards program, and I'm proud to say that in the last 2 years, the Corps of Engineers has received 3 of these Green Gov Awards. The Corps is also actively carrying out the President's Performance Contracting Challenge to help federal agencies accelerate their program on energy and water conservation, as well as greenhouse gas reduction. Taking on this challenge, the Corps of Engineers has committed to awarding $12.5 million in energy savings performance contracts by the end of December of 2016. I wanted to take a brief moment here to talk about the Clean Water Rule. Together with the Environmental Protection Agency, we finalized the Clean Water Rule in May of this year, and I think Stan may have talked about this earlier today. It's an important reminder to all of us that the Clean Water Act, plain and simple, makes it illegal to pollute or destroy the waters of the United States. For years, we've operated under a lot of confusion due to the Swank and Rapanos Supreme Court decisions. Too often, when someone applied for a Clean Water Act permit, the Corps had to go through a long, expensive, case-by-case process to determine whether the Clean Water Act applied. And that was even before the permit application could even be processed. This uncertainty in the process has left our waters vulnerable to pollution. Our rule will make it clear which waters are covered and which waters aren't. Today, we have far better science that confirms how waters connect to each other. This science was not available when the Clean Water Act was passed 43 years ago. The Army, working with EPA, we are implementing this rule as we speak. Together, we're going to provide clarity, consistency, and predictability. This rule will ensure that for generations to come, Americans will have the clean water necessary to sustain our way of life as well as our economy. We owe it to future generations to protect, to preserve, and conserve the precious water resources of this country. And I am proud of the work of the Corps of Engineers and what they are doing to meet this challenge. We are adapting, we're moving with the world, the economy, and the environment, and we're ready for the future. Thank you very much.